Uh,
All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Derry Merkins, CEO of Gunner Technology. Is with us, Cody Swan. What's up?
I'm looking. Our pre-conversation got me interested in what's coming out.
Yeah, apologies for being late, but we just got into like an extended 10-minute discussion of why Jurassic World 2 is the greatest satire in the modern Hollywood blockbuster, possibly of all time.
That's right.
It's like Rear Window-esque in that it's or like Inception. Inception's a more recent one where it's like a commentary about the actual process of filmmaking itself. But we could talk about that for hours. But instead, we're going to talk about the best and worst things about being a software developer. But before we get to that, we got our weekly Country Store giveaway, which we've got Colin T from Tampa, Florida, is the winner this week of the Country Store giveaway. So Colin, big congrats for that. You got a hat coming your way. You got copies of our ebooks heading out there too. So enjoy those. And anyone who is interested in signing up for the Country Store giveaway, head on over to our Facebook page and sign up for that. And while you're there, you are going to answer our question of the week, which this week, Cody, remind them of what the, and while you're looking that up, because you don't have that readied up, we can talk about Country Store. Country Store is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors, and you can visit them at countrystore.outfitters.com and get a whole bunch of really cool swag. And if you're in the Florida area, Country Store has tons of appearances at concerts and live events and all kinds of stuff. So if you see the Country Store trailer around, make sure to pop in, say hi to everyone, and grab some gear.
And it provides the trailer provides cover because every event has been like a rain out or a near rain out. It's been
so we provide a service too. We're
right.
serving the public with Country Store.
Well, the Facebook is actually like down, at least for me. It is
down for everyone or just for me?
If I'm in incognito mode, it works, but
it's a feature.
Yeah, there we go. I can kind of see the poll. Oh, yeah. Are you worried about privacy online? And are you worried about your privacy online? And
which is ironic to ask on Facebook, I guess, right?
Yeah, checking in at just under 100%. We have close to 2,000 votes, and it's just under 100%. I think because I voted no, because I don't really give a crap. I just don't give a crap. Like, I mean, having my identity stolen would be kind of a hassle, but I don't buy stuff on credit, and like, I don't know what the worst that could happen. I really don't know what the worst that could happen is.
Is there a worry of like? See, the really interesting stuff is I think there's a genuine worry of the surveillance state or like the mass amount of data that companies and governments have now and how they're able to sort of build profiles. But I think that ship is largely sailed. I think once you have enough data that you can build profiles on millions of data points, you don't actually need any more data beyond that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like the end game is not a violation of privacy. It's more like what are you concerned about? You know, and again, like with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, the concern was, well, they're using my information to manipulate my thinking. Is that the concern, or are you scared of your identity getting stolen? Are you concerned about your credit card getting stolen? Like, I would be curious to know what the concern is, or maybe it's just kind of a general kind of icky feeling that the government knows a lot about me. I'm just curious to know. I'd be curious to know what the specific concern is.
I would think it's largely the latter, honestly, but I don't know. I think sort of the devil's in the details of the mechanism there. I think you're just gonna have like it's just the nature of the beast that if you're using any of these social networking sites, your information is going to be out there.
Yeah,
or at least stored somewhere.
Speaking of which, there has been, as an aside for the privacy things, there has been a couple bad PR for Alexa in the news lately. I guess apparently
didn't it laugh one time, like creepily laugh?
Yeah, it sounded like a laugh. That was one of them. And then I guess there was a family having a conversation, and the Alexa thought she heard the trigger word and started recording the conversation, and then emailed the conversation to someone in the person's contact list.
Yeah,
And
it's like it misheard words in like the perfect way, like 10 different times to record a conversation and send it to someone in someone's
yeah,
contact
exactly.
list.
Like, and it's funny because the laws of probability are starting to catch up to it, where weird stuff like that is going to happen because there's so many Alexas out there now that the probability is going to starting to produce weird things. But we actually met with the Alexa team, and I'm pretty certain that Alexa, based on their response to one of our questions, I'm pretty sure that Alexa is not monitoring you 24/7 until it hears a trigger word like Alexa or whatever you've programmed the trigger word to be. It's not listening. It's not active at all times. However, what is weird about Alexa is if you on your contacts, you can say I won't say her name because she's sitting right next to me and she'll actually try to do it. But I'll say blah blah blah. Drop in on dairy, and if you're in my contact list, your Alexa will ping. You'll hear like a ping, a bing. But after that, I can hear what's going on via your Echo Dot. So like,
Oh, what?
yeah. So like, let's say you were gone. Let's say you were away from your house, and I said blah blah blah. Drop in on dairy. So your Echo Dot would bing once, and it lights up. It glows a dark red, so you can know
Well,
it's
that's
on.
not terrifying at all. So that's good.
But all mine are in a place where I can't see them anyway. So I would
Yeah.
not know if someone had dropped in on me and was like listening to my conversation. It would be someone that I knew because you can't just drop in on a stranger. But it would
Yes.
it would be someone could just kind of like listen in on me.
All right. Well, that's awesome. What a feature. Drop in on anyone, anytime.
And it's supposed to be like, for conferencing or or be like, hey wife, can you bring me a cup of coffee or something like that. It's supposed to be like stuff like that kind of thing. But
I feel like it's supposed to be is the definition of
famous
technology, the history of technology.
famous last
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. I think that's the story of technology is it's supposed to be, and then it turns into something completely different. But that's for another time, or for a villain in a comic book movie. It's like, yeah, Alexa's the new Ultron, I guess.
Yeah.
And what's
Mr.
the question for next week?
The question for next week, and I was kind of noodling through this as I read that one, but I think I'm going to go with do you work more? Because I'm trying to put it in like a yes or no, and I was trying to think of a good break point. Do you think would you say you work more or less than 9 hours a week? And it'll be more or less.
9?
Excuse me, 9 hours a day. Sorry.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say, I know we're lazy, but we're not that lazy. 9 hours a day.
And
That's
this is
a
another
good
thing where
number. That's a really good number.
okay, so I'll go with 9 then. And it's one of those questions where it's so vague, and I guess intentionally so, but because
Are
what
you talking
constitutes
about a 5-day work week, by the way, too? Are you talking about,
yeah.
or like on days you work, do you work more or less than 9 hours a day?
No, let's say like a 5-day work week. Like on
Okay. Okay.
average in a week, would you work more or less than 9 hours a day?
Okay.
And then but it's interesting because like what constitutes working? If I'm responding to a business email from the elliptical at the gym, is that working? That's
Yeah, I
the
would think so.
interesting.
I think any activity related to your current business is technically work,
Yeah.
regardless of what sort of secondary activities you're involved in at the moment.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And it's just I think with that allowance,
Caveat. Yeah.
with that allowance, I think we'll probably see people go over the 9 hours. But I'm curious to see.
Especially in this day and age, it's so competitive. I think you almost have to put in the long hours to sort of remain a viable employee,
Unless you live in Europe.
where you're mandated to work 35 hours or less.
Yes.
I saw something that South Korea just eliminated I think it was the 52-hour work week. So South Korea is kind of going the other direction, where they've had mandated insane hours. And I guess my brother worked in Korea too, and he said everyone stays basically till like 9 p.m. and you just don't leave until then. And they've actually also instituted something where they're shutting they're physically turning computers off. Like they've mandated that computers have to turn off at 5 p.m. on Friday so that people go out and have a life.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So they're sort of mandating. They're trying to get people to work less because I guess people work just insane hours in Korea.
The problem with that is you get people working less, and I guarantee you crime rates go up, and I guarantee you start having mental problems. I guarantee it. Like
Not in Korea though. In Korea, there's absolutely zero crime.
yeah,
Well, it
probably
might
because they
work
work so
there.
much.
Yeah, that could be right. Yeah, they're always in the office.
That's what I'm saying. Idle hands don't just make for waste. Idle hands make for all kinds of problems.
So just keep people in the office, and there goes your crime rate plummets.
Exactly. It sounds ridiculous, but
it's like our THX 1138 dystopian future. Just keep people in like their little pods, and there's absolutely zero crime. Okay, but yeah, hop on and answer if you work more than 9 hours a day. I'm actually genuinely curious to see what the numbers are on that, because I would think it would be way over, but maybe not. Maybe our European fans will sort of skew the numbers. But the topic this week, actually, the question this week is, and it's somewhat related. What are the best and worst things about being a software developer? We kind of talked about the worst things last week when we talked about all the frustrations, which I'll happily rehash those. But maybe start with what are the best things about being the software developer?
Well, the best thing is uh, like almost instant gratification when you're building something. Like it's not like a house where you have to wait. I don't know how long it takes to build a house. 4 months to see a finished product. Like you can see a finished product almost instantly, and people are using your finished product. Hopefully, almost always, some people will be using it. Um, and so I think that's the most like satisfying part of it, or one of the best parts of it, is that like you're creating something and it doesn't take a lifetime to see your creation come to life.
Yeah, it's the craftsman angle, but with sort of the lack of delayed gratification. Like you're building something useful and really cool, but you're not building a cathedral that takes 100 years to build.
Right, exactly. That's a big one. I also like what's something that's really satisfying is going back and kind of, especially when you're learning something new, and like you, even if you've been doing it for like 4 months, and you go back and look at what you did on month one versus like how you're doing it now, and you're like, man, I've learned a lot, because you like see your mistakes or see your sloppiness, and it's only been 3 months, but you've come so far in terms of your knowledge domain. It's just kind of satisfying in that regard too.
Yeah, refactoring code is actually a really pleasing exercise, because you do see how much you've matured. Right? Yeah.
Like liposuction, it really
Yeah,
is.
your code gets way fitter afterwards.
That's right.
It's like it's like a body makeover. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally nice. It's really nice. That's a big one too.
Which I guess sort of goes. That's almost going back to the craftsman model, because I think a lot of what makes crafts work enjoyable is simply getting better at it, and being able to produce nicer and nicer things. It's almost any creative pursuit where you just put in the effort, and just by banging your head against the wall and doing it for hours and days and weeks and months and years, like all of a sudden you're just really good at what you do.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and just things that would have taken you like days to figure out take you minutes, and so the learning is so tangible that it's just pretty cool to be able to see the growth, and when you can whip out something, in a couple minutes that like works, and you don't have to look anything up, you just kind of know it. That's satisfying as well.
Well, I think what's cool too there, and maybe slightly different from the craftsman angle, is that the tools improve all the time. So we got to mess around with new technologies. I mean, the tools are awful sometimes too, but a lot of new technologies sort of give you the power to spin something up in what used to take months, and then you can spin something up in a matter of days now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it was interesting because I was reading this piece about, and this is probably one of the worst things about our industry is all the buzzwords that you have, but this whole thing called Devops, which is kind of where the developer takes on more responsibilities of like the DBA, the build engineer, which was a new job title I hadn't really heard of, but a build engineer, and a few others. And this person was saying that this industry expert was saying that the word DevOps is ridiculous, which it is. I'll give him that. It's another buzzword, but that it only works in startups, and there's a reason we have that it's just like we fall in love with startups, so we try to make every company a startup. But it's not really that. It's not that at all. It's because we have such great tools now that we can script most of the responsibilities of a DBA. So like, 10 years ago, you were running your own database and you had to configure it from scratch. And yeah, you needed a DBA who had deep expertise in that. Now you can script the creation of a database that's fully managed on AWS. So you don't really need a full-fledged DBA. That knowledge really doesn't need to be there. In fact, if you ever get to the point where it would be cheaper just to hire a DBA as a consultant to come in for like, a week and then tell you what that one problem is, rather than having them on staff for indefinitely. So the tool set has gotten so much better to the point where it's allowing a single person to do the job of like 3 or 4 people now.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because there's sort of the devil's in the details. Or there's two sides to that coin. So, like, on the one hand, you can offload a ton of what would have been day to day onto third party experts, basically. So you can leverage AWS products so that you don't have to be a DBA. You don't have to manage servers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can sort of throw onto AWS and say, you guys are much better at this than us, so you guys take care of this part. And they do an incredible job. But I think the other side is the sort of proliferation of new technologies. And it's not just buzzwords, it's that there's a million ways to do the same thing. And there's often sort of a paralyzing effect to that, where people are constantly jumping on the newest fad, or they can't make a decision about what technology to go with, or they constantly flip providers and they have to learn new ways of doing things. So there's almost the negative aspect of that is actually making a decision and just sort of sticking with it as far as technology or third party providers go.
Right. That's right. I mean, and kind of being smart about who you pick. And it was weird because, for a while it looked like, Heroku was going to be that, and which is owned by Salesforce. And then kind of AWS comes along, and we moved our stuff from Heroku to AWS. But it's important to pick the winner because, one of the things that people make too big of a deal out of is vendor lock-in. It is a hassle in some respect because, like I said, we had to move from Heroku to AWS. But at this point, you have like I would say 3 or 4 main choices for kind of a cloud provider. And so you have to be intelligent about who you go with, because you don't want to be kind of moving your whole operations from one cloud provider to the other. But that's another thing that you hear people talk about is vendor lock-in, and how they kind of get you building your stuff on their platform, and then you're stuck with their platform. But that's not a bad thing if you're stuck with the right platform.
Yeah, and I would actually let me know if you agree, but I would say that's one of the worst things about being a software developer is, I mean, we were talking about comic book movies. It's almost like a DC Marvel debate where people get, it's not locked in. It's not locked in the sense of you can't move to a different provider. It's locked in the sense that you imagine that your provider is the pinnacle of whatever service they're providing, and any thread that talks about pros and cons immediately becomes sort of a flame war about
Yeah.
why your chosen provider is the best.
Yeah, like a religious debate as opposed to anything that's actually,
And
yeah,
that goes
exactly.
with programming languages or frameworks or anything. There's just sort of like there's a severe negative energy to any sort of discussion around optimal technology solutions.
Oh my gosh, the I stumbled upon, I didn't even know this existed.
You
I
stumble upon.
stumbled upon. I stumbled upon a conversation about MySQL versus Postgres, and my gosh.
It's honestly a religious debate at that point.
Well, but the funny thing is they're both great pieces of software. I mean, they both are, and they actually both have cases where they're better than the other one at certain things. But it's like politics. Neither side will admit that. Like, for example, one thing that Postgres is not very good at is handling short-lived connections, a whole bunch of short-lived connections, like what happens in a serverless framework. MySQL is much better at doing that than Postgres, to the point where Postgres has third-party software to make it better at doing that. And so that got brought up, and it was like, yeah, well, that's just because MySQL is a buggy piece of crap. Like, it's like, what?
Yeah.
You can't like give an inch, and yeah, that is exhausting. Where like how things are just carte blanche better in people's minds, and they
Yeah,
don't
and
see
I think
anything
because of
different.
that, it's hard to sort of, when you're making these technology decisions, to sort of make an objective opinion, because so much of it is subjective back and forth. So
Oh
you
yeah,
really, it's tough. You really have to do your due diligence to sort of figure out what the actual uh, right solution is, and not
yeah,
necessarily what some troll says is the right solution.
yeah, and we did that with before arriving at React. We tried, I had done stuff in Ember, I did stuff in Backbone.
Angular.
Angular as well, and then are finally arriving at a React. But see, even then, even though we did a good survey before kind of being like, okay, React is our best fit, like we left off some of the popular ones like Vue and something else, which I can't remember right now. But so it's almost impossible to do a complete survey. But like you got to try out at least like 2 or 3 competing frameworks or technologies or whatever, and then make the decision. And then if neither of those work, go to another one. But if those work for you, pick the best of those 3 and then just start learning it.
What do you think another that falls under the worst things about being a software developer is? What's another aspect? I guess we talked about frustrations last week, and there's lots of
Yeah.
frustrations around communication issues and stuff like that. But does anything else spring to mind as far as worst things about being a software developer?
Well, yeah. Sometimes, and we kind of touch on this, but the purists in software development are extraordinarily annoying sometimes, especially like we've run into where a open source software is working just fine. It's working
Yes,
just fine,
that's
and
a
then
great
someone
one.
on the open source team just decides this works, but it wasn't done the right way. And so, in order to do it the right way, they have to break the software package for everyone who's using it. And so then you're stuck in what's called dependency hell, because you have to upgrade to this latest version to get it to work again. But upgrading this package means that this package no longer works. So you have to upgrade that package, which means this package no longer works. So that is just one of the most annoying things you come across.
We actually just ran into that with we use a Google Drive gem in one of our repositories, and the developer updated the Google Drive gem to, I forget exactly what the error was. It was to use net HTTP in a certain way, where it explicitly returned an error instead of sort of just failing silently. But by explicitly returning an error, your code breaks off at that point. So nothing executes beyond that point, as opposed to failing silently, where it would still execute stuff. It would give you a warning, but everything would still execute and be fine. So we just removed that line of code. Like we just said, okay, I know this is the right way to do it. This is exactly the specification, but you're being a little bit OCD about this, and you're breaking our code.
Right,
So
right.
we just rip that part out. And I guess that is, you see it too in project management methodologies too, where people stick to the process so religiously. And it again becomes sort of a religious thing that you can't even recognize the inefficiencies in the process. You can't say, I understand this is how theoretically it's supposed to work, but it's not providing any benefit, and it's wasting 15-30 minutes of our time every day. So I don't think we actually need to do this.
Right. And it's funny because we're big fans of process, but part of having a process is knowing when to not use the process.
Exactly, exactly. You can't just sort of get locked into the process, capital P. Like it has to be a process that just works day to day and improves the way that you produce the work, as opposed to just sort of being a series of steps or a list of rules that you follow blindly.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, you have to have standards, you have to have a process, but just following that process because it's a process, instead of being like, yeah, I'm actually really well aware of the process and it works really well, but right now I need to do this. Do it. Whatever. it,
Yeah, it's just a process.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's end on a high note. Give me one more best thing about being a software developer.
Well, for us, which goes for any software developer, really, some companies don't allow this, but working from anywhere is such a privilege that a lot of people don't even fully appreciate. But, a lot of times when I'm not doing meetings and I'm just writing code, I'm doing it from a bar or an outdoor tiki bar, for example. So, like,
Right? Yeah.
I mean, like, that
Nice
is
freedom to have.
yeah, that is such a nice privilege that you really can't put a dollar amount on. Where, because I mean, even if you enjoy going into an office, which I know there are people, but they're getting fewer and fewer. There's days where you really don't want to go in the office, even if you like going in the office. And so, kind of to have that luxury to never have to go to an office is just, it's so wonderful.
It's kind of weird that people like going into an office because you think about it, and office work is like 75 years old. It's such a new
Yeah,
invention, and yet it sort of just took over to the point that everyone imagines going into an office is what work is. That's
yeah.
never been what work is.
And what's weird is my gut reaction is that it's people who need structure who like that. But
Yeah,
then I think
that's
about
yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
but then I think about the people who actually do like going into the office, and they're the people who go in and they are like the office chatty catty. Like,
Right.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. They're
They're not
constantly
there in
surfing
structure.
social networks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they're popping
The
up. Be like, oh,
illusion of structure. Right.
you know what I did this week? You know what? Blah 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 blah. They're the biggest time wasters, but
Hey,
they
you see
love going
Jurassic
in.
World 2 this weekend? It's
Yeah,
like, I'm
exactly.
trying to work, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And those are
And
the
yes, I
people
did, and
who
it was
I
amazing.
and those are the people who like going into the office. And I was going to say that the office does provide structure, but those people, they're not structured.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that, obviously we have tools now where you can communicate pseudo face to face. So it's not even sort of the community angle of an office space isn't really there anymore. I mean, you can constantly hop on a Google Hangout or phone call to talk to somebody. If you actually need to have that direct communication.
Right,
So
right.
so the benefits of the office are sort of falling by the wayside, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, if I can I'm going to throw in one more worst thing about being a software developer because I was just reminded of it by you having to reset your PRAM. I think actually having to deal with hardware is one of the worst things about being a software developer. Whether
Oh
it's like
God.
the myriad mobile devices you have to worry about, or your individual machines just like completely breaking down for no apparent reason.
Can we
That
glob? Go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
I would say, can we glob onto that? Everyone thinks that you can fix their computer.
Well, I mean, we don't do ourselves any favors by actually being the ones who can fix people's computers. Like, I'm not sure I've ever been asked, like, I've ever been given a hardware problem and not been able to solve it. It's
Yeah.
just anyone can solve it just by sort of doing Google searches and figuring it out on their own.
Right.
But we're sort of just imagined to be uh, a pseudo geek squad.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So that is one of the worst things about being a software developer. But it's kind of a humorous note to end on, so we'll end it there. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. Make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time when we won't spend 15 minutes talking about Jurassic World 2 and be 15 minutes late. Make sure to check out the blog post at gunnertech.com. Check out the podcast on iTunes and look up our ebooks on iBooks, Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Check out our sponsor, Country Store, at countrystoreoutfitters.com, and sign up for the Country Store giveaway on our Facebook page. And while you're there, answer the question of the week, which is, remind them, Cody.
Do you work more or less than 9 hours a day on average in a week?
And are we going to say, because we were just talking about Chatty Cathy's, are we going to say, are you working 9 hours a day, or do you actually work 9 hours or more a day? Like, what are we counting work as explicit tasks towards a goal as opposed to just sort of mingling in an office, I guess?
Yeah, like if you're in an office, I guess that counts.
Oh man, really?
Yeah, I guess so.
So if I'm in an office from 8 to 5 and I'm watching cat videos all day, we'll count that as 9 hours of work.
Yeah, I guess so. They're in the
That's
office.
generous. Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, I guess they're present and could be working. Are you present and could be working 9 hours or more a day, regardless of whether you're actually working.
Yeah, exactly. I think that counts because they're actually in the office.
Okay, so hop on our Facebook page and answer that question of the week. And make sure to tune in next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. I'm Derry. That's Cody. We'll see you next time.